Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to this webinar about winning the online car shopper with conversational commerce. I'm Tim Rose, the editor of AM, and I'll be hosting and chairing the webinar. And with me is today's presenter, Ed Parkinson from ContactAtOnce. In a moment, Ed will begin the presentation, but before he does, let me remind you how you can get involved. You've joined us in listen-only mode. However, you should all have a GoToWebinar dialog box somewhere on the right-hand side of your screen, which you can type into. And we do urge you, please take part. We encourage you to type in your questions, comments, even challenge some of what you'll hear while the webinar is live. And all the questions will come to me, and I'll be putting those questions to Ed at the end. We allow 10-15 minutes to do that. So for now, that's enough for me. So over to you, Ed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Parkinson. I am VP of Dealer Development for ContactAtOnce. I have been with the company for about 11 and a half years and spent the last 21 years of my career in the, I would call it the automotive connections business. And with ContactAtOnce, our focus has been on being a part of a dealership's advertising. And the result of being a part of the advertising for all of you is that people will message, which means they will chat, they will text, they will actually use Messenger. 11, 12 years ago, we just called them what they were, chat, text, and message. And today, the term has changed to conversational commerce. It was made famous by Chris Messina at Uber. So enough about that, and I will move on with the presentation. I first have a quote from Steve Jobs, and the quote is, "Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking." And when I saw this quote, I just decided to look up the word dogma to make sure I understood it. And it was defined as a set of principles laid down, not to be denied. In other words, this is the way that we've always done it, so this is the way that we will do it moving forward. And I believe it's important for us all to think differently as we move forward. For example, I hear things like, if it's not in my CRM, it didn't happen. Where I would argue that because you overuse your CRM, it probably won't happen with the customer. I think of leads. Everything is so focused on leads in our industry. How many leads did we get today? How many leads did we close? What was the lead source? It's a currency, if you will. I look at a lead as a false hope of a future sale. Consumers today use a totally different currency. Their currency is speed and transparency and confidence and elucidation. And the other things that are changing, which I think we can't be trapped in, is that natural voice search is beginning. It's at its very early stages, but it's beginning to take away some of the things in websites. People are moving to natural voice search over a website because it's more human-like. Today, every mobile device on Earth is currently enabled to have a secure business transaction. So how will that impact service and parts and even sales? AI bots will become a requirement of business in the near future, which means the business development center managers in dealerships, their roles will begin to change where they are managing a bot and managing people. Of course, they're the best people to manage the bot because they know the business. And there will be new ways to market and talk to customers, to market vehicles and talk to customers through places like Facebook and Apple and Google, and the list is growing. There are two terms to understand and prepare for because they are coming to your industry very soon. The first is digital retailing. You can go onto Google and look up a definition. There are many definitions. They're all very similar. The way we would define digital retailing is another connection point for the consumer to engage in a continuous conversation with the brand or the dealership. We believe that digital retailing will help customers save time. It will reduce the pressures of car buying. It will make the dealership more efficient if done well. And digital retailing done right has to connect the online and in-store experiences to create a single unified experience for the consumer. A couple of weeks ago, I attended a conference in Northern California, and Chip Perry, the CEO of TrueCar, was one of the presenters. TrueCar is much like the UK version of Carwell. And he said in his presentation that you can have all the technology and all of the digital retailing until the cows come home, is how he described it. But unless you humanize the experience, you will fail. And that's the area that I want to focus on today, which is humanizing the experience. And to do that, you need to do that through conversation. This was one of his final slides in his presentation, and the headline was, "Traditional Dealership Marketing Fails to Address Key Consumer Information Gaps." And what TrueCar did is they asked a couple of thousand post-dealership visit respondents. The question was, when thinking about which dealership to visit, tell us how important or how difficult key variables were to find. And what they do is they did is created 4 quadrants. And what emerged was the 4th quadrant. And the 4th quadrant were things to consumers that were most important and hard to find. And I thought that you would enjoy this slide because it's important to you. So if you look in the far right up there at, for example, 1 o'clock, the most important thing for a consumer was a no pressure, no surprises experience at the dealership. And what they reported in their study is that 70% of consumers came away dissatisfied because they were under pressure and they had a few surprises when they got to the dealership. So digital retailing is a tool that hopefully will take much of that away. But if you look at this list, people wanted to know who is the specific contact person that I will be meeting. They wanted to know the fairness of the asking price. They wanted to know the upfront parts exchange offer. They wanted to know upfront price, to understand incentives and rebates, have easy and convenient paperwork process. And again, worth mentioning, no pressure, no surprises when they got to the dealership. So I'd like to stop here, Jeremy, if we're set up for it, and ask our first poll question. All right, Jeremy, I'm not hearing feedback, so I will move forward with the presentation. There was an article that I read about a month ago from the Gottman Institute, and it was called The Magic Relationship Ratio According to Science. And what they did is they analyzed about 1,000 married couples, and they created some conflict in the study. And what they determined was, at a rate of being 90% accurate, they could predict which couples would remain married 9 years from now. And what they discovered is that for every one negative event, a healthy relationship had 5 positive events that supported that. So when I look at these things that are important and hard to find, if a customer asks a question up front, whether it's verbally or through a message, what is the price? And it isn't given, for example, that's a negative response. So the customer is already beginning to move away from you. So what are the 5 positive things that you can bring into the conversation to keep this relationship healthy moving forward? And I thought that was worth sharing for all of you. Now let's define conversational commerce. It's defined as the intersection, we would define it as the intersection of messaging and natural voice search. So messaging and natural voice search being one, and then combined with digital retailing or that customer's shopping journey. We believe it is the central nervous system of a future sale. It is your voice. It is your personality, awareness, resolution for intent. It's the engine that powers digital retailing. And here at ContactAtOnce, we are actually rebuilding our platform to move into the next generation of communication in our business. We've trademarked the term Automotive Tango, which is the art and science of combining people and technology to provide the best possible customer experience. It's essential for all of us to understand. We also need to understand that consumers are already conversational. Messaging is a primary function of our phones. It is tied to 18 of the world's 22 most popular apps. Last year at Cyber Week, the voice-activated systems were the top sellers. OEMs are already planning for voice-assisted searching and buying. And when I think of conversational commerce, what comes to my mind is sort of like a three-legged stool. And the first leg is Google or Alexa. In other words, how do we find things as people? The second leg is how do we communicate with our friends and our family? You know, we often message, and we message to say, hey, are you available? And then we make a phone call. And the third leg, which is often the short leg, is how do we communicate with our car dealer? Or more importantly, perhaps, how does our car dealer allow us to communicate with them? Or how often does a customer come in through a message and then the dealership, because of just learned behavior and habits, puts that customer, flips them into an email or a phone call when the customer wanted to be on a different communication channel. This is a picture of the continuous customer journey. Basically, it's a circle. You can see in the middle is a person and all the ways to contact the dealership through messaging. But I'm looking for a car, which makes some models for me. But the point is here, from the first consideration to the life of the customer experience, consumers deserve and demand a continuous conversational journey that gives them the information they need when they need it. And that's the important part, when they need it. And when you look at websites in general, websites are much like libraries. They're built with HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which basically archives the world's information and puts it in library format. So when we search much like we're moving into a library. But when you look at a car dealership, it's certainly not a library. Librarians don't work there. And it's not as human, perhaps, as it could be. In fact, all of e-commerce across the world is much like a library today. It's probably one of the reasons why sales are actually very low in consideration. But there is a shift coming. There's a shift coming where AI and bots will deliver, bits of information packets to consumers as needed, so they don't have to hunt and peck. So it's coming, and we just have to pay attention. So we believe that successful dealers of the future will have this tango, this art and science of conversational commerce in the only time that truly matters, which is the customer's time, right? Always being ready for that customer. So I'd like to ask another poll question, which evolves around, do you see car buying fitting into the conversational commerce?
Thanks, Ed. We'll just give people 20 seconds or so to complete the poll, and then we'll show the results.
Okay, sorry, Tim. Thank you.
Okay, and now the results. Oh. That's unanimous, isn't it? Okay, Ed, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's now move and understand the landscape that is around us. And the numbers really are disastrous if you look at them. Across the globe, website conversions are less than 5%. In auto, experts believe that our websites are converting in the neighborhood of about 1%, 1 to 2%. As I mentioned a moment ago, e-commerce only represents 11% of the gross national product. Amazon has 50% of that. People still love that in-store experience. My wife and I went to the Apple store this weekend to look at a phone. The place was packed. I couldn't believe it. The mall was empty. The Apple store was completely packed. 5% so the conversion is around 5%. Car Wars, which is an automotive telephone company, stated that 33% of phone calls are not answered in the automobile dealerships today. And how many consumers do you never reconnect to? And you try so hard and put so many resources into it. So the numbers aren't good. And where have all the leads gone? So what I look at here is I look at the money. in this gold dollar sign, this gold pound sign, whatever dollar sign, where dealers are spending all of this money to create opportunity for their dealership, and then at some point there's a slippage zone. At some point we create misses. And for example, most dealerships do not maximize the return on their ad spend. There is quite often lead in CRM failure, and I will cover these in a little more detail in a moment. There's no SMS degradation plan to move people from messaging or even email into SMS. Dealerships are on the wrong platform. And when AI sings out of tune, will you stand up and walk out on me? And that's just a little humor. But what we're seeing is AIs beginning to pop up in dealership greetings, and some of them are not set up properly. So what happening when these things happen and when there's a disconnect with the customer, that customer is not found because that customer has moved on. They no longer exist, yet we continue to chase them. So let's look at, market corrections. We've seen them, in the past couple of years. We've seen some examples. For example, CarMax, which is a major automotive retailer, having one price transparency. They will take every part exchange no matter what and provide value. We see a market correction with Hyundai Shopper Assurance, where there's a full digital experience for the consumer. Carvana is another example where you never have to visit the dealership. Cars are in vending machines, and it's very popular. But if you look at this image here that I put up, does anyone on the call recognize those glasses? They are Warby Parker sunglasses, and CDK gave a presentation a week ago, and I thought it was worth mentioning again. Warby Parker decided to sell glasses online, and what happened was they weren't selling. And it's because people want to see how they look, and they were getting a lot of returns too. People want to see how they look in the glasses. How do they feel in the glasses? And what all the experts are saying is that the automobile process will be exactly the same, that people truly want to see how they look in the car. They want to feel how the car, feels, like how they feel inside the car. These things are extremely important. They're extremely emotional. So we believe through digital retailing and conversational commerce that ultimately most consumers want to come into the dealership. They want to work with you, but again, they don't want surprises. There has been a major shift, a profound shift in how consumers and brands interact. Most businesses, big business, are moving away from analog voice into digital communication. Many large businesses have internal answering teams cost 4x of their ad budget, and they want to reduce that. They want to reduce phone calls typically by at least 40%, not to lay people off, but to move people into roles where they can better serve their consumers. Another profound shift was on March 29th, 2018, Apple Business Chat went live, which means every Apple device on Earth is enabled for a consumer to text a business and have a conversation in a secure way where they could actually make a purchase over their phone. And, not all businesses are prepared to do this today. In fact, we're seeing our first dealerships getting involved. We're seeing OEMs getting involved. And about 10 major brands across the globe went live with Apple Business Chat on March 29th. And the last piece, if you look at all of these brands that we do business with here at ContactAtOnce and LivePerson, our parent company, if we were a single domain, we would actually be the fourth largest domain on Earth. So think about that for a moment. We have more interactions per day than nearly every domain on Earth. And these people are all messaging. That's how we count our interactions. So it is just what people do today, and I think the evidence is there. This is a picture of Lucien Bowater, Managing Director for Group Digital Products at Sky. And this caught my eye because last year I spent about 6 months in the UK working with automobile dealerships. Text messaging was just beginning to bubble up and become a little more popular. Some of the results weren't so great. There was a lot of negative sentiment, like, oh, this will never work. But when Sky added the option for consumers to take a voice call and move it into a text message, in a matter of 3 months, 40% of all consumers elected to move that way. And what they're predicting is by the end of this year, 68% of their shoppers and customers that are coming into their network will elect to message. And we're seeing trends like that, in auto too, not from IVR deflection, but just messaging in general. Each year, it just grows in popularity. So where is conversational commerce going? Well, I think quite simply, it's following the money. So wherever the dealership is spending money to attract consumers, that is where conversational commerce will take place, which are these conversations. So our recommendation to all of you, wherever you are investing money to have consumers reach you, and it could be online and offline, all of these places, wherever a person could pick up the phone and call you, you should provide an option for that customer to message you, because the numbers are pretty simple. We've been doing it for 11 years. We've never seen cannibalization ever. And when you add messaging, the number of opportunities tend to increase in the neighborhood of 20%. So AI joins the band. I'd like to ask another poll question before we move into the artificial intelligence, Tim.
Okay, thank you. Again, we'll give about 20 seconds or so for everyone to respond to the poll, and then we'll switch to the results. Okay, thank you all for voting. Let's see the results. There we are. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Tim. So the question was, do you believe a chatbot can help you respond to a car shopper's needs without making it a negative experience? And I think, there's a lot of uncertainty about bots. Early experiences haven't been that great, but there's rapid changes coming. There was an article that was published in 2016 from the Japan Times about music playing and poetry writing AIs. And pictured here is an AI-powered piano playing Schubert like the pianist Richter with 4 Berlin Philharmonic musicians. And portrayed on the floor is a shadow of the bot that's actually interpreting the feelings of the band members in real time. I'm not a technical person. I am not a developer. But when I think about the code that needs to be written for that to take place, it just makes my mind spin. And then the other day, I know that a dealership has a bot answering on their behalf, and I texted I chatted with the dealership, and I asked. It said, "Hi, I'm a bot," and it had a name, and it said, "Ask me questions like, what are your hours or directions?" So I said, "What are your hours?" And it said, "I don't know. Is there anything else I can help you with?" I said, "Sure. Where are you located?" And it said, "Well, I don't know. Is there anything else I can help you with?" And the problem is, right, that's a negative experience. That's a reflection of your dealership's voice. That's a reflection of your dealership's personality, and it's not successful. I'd like to introduce someone to all of you. His name is Eshwar. We work together. I had an opportunity to have a conversation with him in preparing for this meeting. And Eshwar had one very famous boss, and Steve Jobs. He reported to Steve Jobs, and he sold his company to Apple. And our company, LivePerson, acquired his Bot Central company, and he is working, I would say, judiciously, and he's very careful as to what is deployed. But he said to me that it is extremely important for a successful launch that we spend considerable time understanding the brand, the voice of the brand experience, the personality of the people that work there, and taking a deep dive into intent and resolution. And Eshwar is very excited because he said with the number of daily interactions that we have as a company, we are really positioned well to understand intent and resolution in a truthful way. So we're excited, and we're beginning to deploy. We're beginning to deploy now in a few OEMs. So the blind embrace, this would just be for me a word of caution to all of you. So whether it's bots, digital retailing, or conversational commerce, that unless we have people, process, and platform in place, we're not going to win. And this could be a presentation within itself, but I'll move on. But it's just important. It's so important for all of you to be involved. Let's review a few ideas to help you moving forward. So leads in CRM failure, I mentioned it before, but if you look at these companies, what do they all have in common? Facebook, Google, Apple, and AutoTrader UK. And the answer is they all mask the customer information. So when a customer, through these popular sources, communicate with you and they use text messaging, those businesses scramble that consumer's phone number, meaning you don't have it. Now, you can talk to the customer in the message, but you don't have their personal number. So what's happening today in most dealerships, especially if they're outsourcing their conversations, is if the outsourcing company does, a really good job and gets lead information 6 or 7 out of 10 times, and now the lead goes into your CRM, if you are really good at what you do, you will reconnect with 20% of those people. So for every 10 people that are reaching you, you can get back to 2 or 3 because the number's masked, right? So the only lead you're going to get is where they actually got the customer to give up their number to you. That's why it's really important to sometimes bypass the CRM and use the software that the customer came in on so that you can go back and reconnect with the customer. It's very important to our customers. Focusing on right now, what we found that most dealerships, not most dealerships that outsource their conversations as a rule do not have a right now focus on customers. And for example, I was in San Antonio a few weeks ago visiting dealerships, went into 3 dealerships, and this was the number that emerged. On average, the dealerships, they were outsourcing their chats. They had 70% lead capture. 63% of the time on average, the company said to the dealer, hey, can you jump in right now and take this over? We have a fish on the line. You need to reel them in. And the dealerships only responded on average 18% of the time, which means they're failing. And what we've identified is that when dealers are not front-end focused, they tend not to take advantage of the conversations coming in from places like AutoTrader, for example. So, and the other thing is don't change the communication channel. It's so important to keep that customer on the same channel. This is just an illustration. Not the words on this conversation transcript aren't important. It happens to be a text. But what caught my eye is the aging client. So what happened here is this dealer was in a conversation with a consumer. At some point in the conversation, they captured the customer's phone number, and without ending the chat, they sent a text message to the customer. So they had a degradation strategy to move the chat, which ends into a continuous conversation. And that's what they did. And this is the actual transcript. I actually called the dealership, and this vehicle was sold. The customer opened a photo of the car, and the car sold. In this example, what caught my eye was the 18 missed phone calls. So 18 missed phone calls, and this is a product that we have called Call Alert, but we automatically send a text message to the customer on a missed phone call, and this is a transcript that developed from a missed call through text messaging. In this case, the results weren't as happy. The customer made an appointment to come in on a Saturday, but never showed up. But the point is, they did make the connection. So managing conversations with a single tool. When you look at major brands across the world, they're not running multiple chat and text and digital retailing tools in their business. But because the car business is so entrepreneurial and so many entrepreneurial companies selling, to the dealers, we tend to end up with multiple chat tools, multiple text tools, multiple digital retailing tools. We are already seeing it. And on the right-hand side here, I just put a little a JPEG of Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon Christmas Vacation. There's a scene in the movie when Chevy Chase is trying to light up the house, and it's really funny, but it's complete dysfunction with his 75 extension cords plugged into the phone to the outlet. So again, we see this popping up every day as dealerships use multiple tools. They become more and more fragmented, which leads to complicatedness, and it leads to poor usage. So digital retailing is just a part of conversational commerce. It's important. It's coming. I'd like to leave you with just a couple of really important thoughts that a conversation is not a transaction. When conversations are a transaction, they tend to be negative. They tend to be more one-sided. And when I think of a conversation, what I think about is I believe conversations are built upon a relationship. They reinforce, they reinvigorate, and they provide clarity. And just touching on those things just a little bit deeper, when I think of a relationship, I think of no pressure. I think of fairness. I think of trust. I want to know the person that I'm meeting with. We tend to share names when we meet in person. To reinforce, is asking questions like, why are you looking, or validating the result. We've learned that people want validation. They hear that you have the lowest price, but have you validated why you have the lowest price? They hear that you take part exchange, but have you validated why your value would be higher than perhaps someone else around you? And then to reinvigorate is to bring energy into the conversation. You are the voice of the dealership. It is your personality in those messages. You may want to use incentives and rebates to reinvigorate. You may bring fear of loss into the conversation. Oh, that vehicle. We're getting a lot of calls on that vehicle, right? Because people tend to want more of what there is less of. And then when I think of clarity, people just want their answers. They want that, going back to the fourth quadrant, the upfront pricing, the no obligation test drive, the upfront parts exchange. But keep in mind that while people are shopping, when they begin their searches and they disconnect and they sleep on it and then they come back, the subconscious mind doesn't rest, and it is shaping you. It's saying things like, did I like that person? Did that person try to help me? Is that someone that I can have a relationship with? Do I trust them? And they're the things that are happening on the subconscious side. And lastly, with conversational commerce, this is just a short list of items that you can take away to help your team fit in now. So who are the best resources in the dealership to talk to the customers? Keep in mind, it may not always be the BDC. It could be the BDC plus a couple of key salespeople. What I've learned is every dealership usually has a few players that are pretty darn good at what they do. Don't allow brick and mortar to trap you. There's an opportunity here to talk to customers on Friday evenings, early Saturday mornings. These are super high messaging times, and you may not be in the dealership when people are searching. Get everyone involved. What we've found that when the whole dealership is involved, from the owner to the general manager, all the way down to the salespeople and people in the BDC, they are the dealerships that tend to be the most ready for conversational commerce. And be ready to rock and roll at lunchtime. Again, Friday nights and weekends. Lunchtime is the most popular messaging time. A missed message should be blamed on someone or something. So if you have a digital strategy in place, and it's not performing, why isn't it performing? You need to address that. Reward those people who participate and blame those people that do not. Ask yourself, are my conversations successful? Do they reinforce, reinvigorate, and provide clarity? That's the human side of things, as Mr. Perry said in his presentation, that will help you win. And did the customer leave the conversation fulfilled? They're the things that you can look at by reviewing transcripts. And this is my final slide, or final two slides. Again, Automotive Tango. What we are building here is we are building this circle, this dance, if you will, of having messaging for you everywhere the customer can find you. Using Autobots in the near future, we're beginning to see early deployments to assist dealerships to become more proficient, efficient, and then live guides, people at our business that help you with your business. And again, most importantly, high level of dealership involvement. Change is coming. It's time to get ready for the conversational commerce era. Experts are saying that the tipping point is likely to happen within the next 12 months. This is not going to take a long time. It's on its way. Tim, I want to thank the audience for being here.
Fantastic, Ed. Thank you very much for presenting. We've had some questions come in, which I'll put to you in a second. But if anybody else listening wants to submit a question, there is still time. first one, Ed, which came in fairly early on, asked you to repeat your definition of digital retailing, please. They wanted to make sure they had a note of all the keywords you mentioned. It was a slide fairly early on in the
Yeah.
presentation.
So our definition would be that digital retailing is another connection point for the consumer to engage in a continuous conversation with the dealership. And it helps the customer save time. It reduces the pressure of car buying. It can make the dealership more efficient if it's done well. And we also believe that digital retailing done right has to connect the online and in-store experiences to create a single unified experience, which is really what digital retailing is, right? So when you think about it, it's making it a single continuous journey from beginning through the sale of the car at the dealership.
Okay, fantastic. Here's another one. What do you think is the most important part of conversational commerce strategy for dealerships?
I would say the most important part is being available. You know, making sure the best resources are present, because the human element is the really important thing. Like what we believe is that if the dealership is not involved, that these opportunities are going to begin to crumble away. So whether it's bots, even if it's with bots, you know, bots can only do so much, right? There has to be a human side. And so we need the people at the dealership to be available now more than ever.
Okay, thank you. And I thought it was interesting the second poll that we did on where the audience see car buying fitting into conversational commerce. We had a 100% response in that most shoppers will buy this way. Was that a surprise at all to you, Ed? Do you think?
It's a surprise to be at 100% because, you know, the automobile business has been set, you know, it set in stone doing things a certain way, right? You know, leads and so forth. So I think it's great that people are understanding, you know, where it's all going.
Certainly. Okay. Another question's come in. Would you say that digital retailing is really just a part of the larger conversational commerce strategy that a dealership will need?
Yeah, I feel that they are two peas in a pod, and you know, without the human element, as you know, Chip Perry said in his presentation, you may fail. So I would just say that they're just one goes with the other.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned in your presentation voice assistants, like the recently launched Apple Business Chat. Is that something that dealers can take advantage of in the future?
Yeah. So what ContactAtOnce is doing, I guess I should define a couple of things. So voice assistants are systems such as Alexa and Siri, and you know you can ask it questions, and we are working with them currently, our parent company, LivePerson, to provide you know a single continuous connection with a customer. Like there's examples now where a consumer can be at the kitchen, you know, cooking a dinner, starting a conversation, you know, having dinner, leaving with their children to take them to football practice, and then you know get on their phone and continue the conversation, right? So with Apple Business Chat, that's a text-based messaging platform that's actually live on the phones, on our phones. And what we're seeing now, we are productizing, so we are building a way to release these items for the masses. That's going to take some time. It's all relatively new. We have had several large dealer groups approach us, and they're co-investing to move you know messaging into their business. So it has the attention. It has the attention of many businesses, Tim. They're beginning to focus, and of course there are several OEMs involved currently.
Well, that was what I was going to ask next, Ed. Really, is the opportunity there with the manufacturers, particularly in terms of voice search and voice assistance?
Yeah, for sure. It's coming. It's those conversations are taking place. With Apple Business Chat, it's I wouldn't. Well, I would say it's somewhat that the I would like a cosign type of thing, right? That for a single dealership to get Apple Business Chat, that's going to take some time. We might be a year or two away from that. Over a large dealer group, when they get approved by Apple, they go through the process and get approved. That'll happen sooner. What'll happen is, I believe, with the OEM, there'll be some pretty tight processes in place. There will be bots launched to ensure bots and humans combined to ensure a really positive experience, which is important to a company like Apple, so that there's no misses. And so I think that's going to be the first thing that we see in our industry, where the OEM drives it down to the dealerships, and the dealerships are piggybacking and they get involved from the OEM.
Okay, that makes sense. Another question's come in here, Ed. How can dealers incentivize or motivate the front end staff to take conversational commerce more seriously? Are there KPIs that they should be measuring, and how do they I guess kind of reward them for meeting those?
Yeah, there are. I mean, you can go into and certainly look at reports that matter, like agent performance, how many opportunities were available, and how many did that person take. I just think it might be. I hate to use the term with a stick, right? But the reality is, we have to hold our people accountable. And if you ask an owner of a dealership, is this a democracy or a dictatorship? Most will tell you it's a dictatorship, right? So they have to put processes in place and hold people accountable, right? They're spending all this money, they're making these investments, and 33% of phone calls are missed. And if dealerships are not supported, like we try to deploy a co-managed type scenario, because we know the dealerships, because it's retail, there's interruptions, or maybe some people just aren't involved. We know there's misses, right? We can't have misses, and we have to hold people accountable. And when you do, I can tell you, Tim, when an owner answers a conversation and takes it down and says, ladies and gentlemen, I just spoke to this customer. This customer is coming in tonight, but I have a business to run here. I have to make important decisions for all of us. Things change, and it'll take that. But once that happens, the dealership will be on its way.
I guess like anything, it's a mindset thing, isn't it? It's making it part of their routine, making it just part of their mindset.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I have a dealer group that comes to mind, which I was so excited to hear about. They told me their new employee training program. First, the dealership learns the first day about company culture, and then they have to learn about the product. They go through product training, which takes, I believe, almost a week. Then they go through CRM training, and then, believe it or not, they go through messaging training at their dealership, which, so there's an evolution, right, that is extremely interesting. So, yeah, thanks for the reminder.
Okay, no problem. Right, well, thank you, everyone. That's the last of the questions we've received. So I'll wrap up now. I'd like to say a thank you to Ed Parkinson of ContactAtOnce for today's presentation. I'm sure it's given you plenty to think about. And if you wish to view it again, it will be published on AM Online shortly. So a huge thank you to you, the audience, for joining us today and taking an interest in this webinar on winning the online car shopper with conversational commerce. There will be more webinars from AM in the coming months on a variety of topics. So do please keep an eye on AM Online and on your daily newsletters for details. So that's all now from me and from Ed. Thank you all for listening, and have a good day. Thank you.